After this, I want to bring in our China watcher, Stanford professor Anja Manuel. She is a member of the U.S. China Relations Committee. Professor, it sounds like this is progress, no?
I think it is. It's clearly a goodwill gesture ahead of the talks. Two things about this exemption worry me. One, despite the U.S. trade representative's best efforts, it's hard to make a process like this fair. So it's likely that the companies with the best lobbying are going to get the exemptions. And two, China's economy isn't that dependent on exports anymore. So I worry that relying on tariffs alone isn't enough. China only has a 0.8% as its GDP of net exports, and we need to use other tools in our toolbox to win this trade war. I would say, for example, we need to start working with our friends and allies. When you have a bully in town, like China is on economic issues, you want to have friends along. And so if we get the Europeans, the Japanese, others on board, we'll be much stronger.
Well, it looks like we might get the Mexicans and the Canadians on board if we get a USMCA deal. How important is getting a USMCA deal in our leverage with China?
I think it certainly helps. We don't want to be fighting with our friends right here in North America if we're pushing back against mercantilist issues on China. And by the way, the Mexicans and Canadians are also suffering from that Chinese mercantilism. So I hope that Congress can resolve its differences with Lighthizer and we get that USMCA deal done.
The president, of course, is against these regional treaties. He wants to be country-specific in the treaties. I mean, USMCA is an exception to that. But when you're talking about Europe, yes, it looks like we're making progress with the UK deal. We're making progress, by the way, with the Japanese deal. We have a partial deal with Japan. It's not a comprehensive one. But is that going to be enough to sort of piecemeal this process together of a coalition against China?
We used to do trade deals all as one enormous round of GATT rounds, a Uruguay round, et cetera, as you well know, David. Lately, that has fallen apart, partly because the U.S. wants to do less, partly because the rest of the world wants to do less. I think bilateral deals alone aren't going to be enough, but you could imagine smaller regional deals that help. Maybe we find our way back in a reformed Trans-Pacific Partnership at one point, which I think would be beneficial.
Interesting. Professor, stay with us. I want to go back to Edward for a second because we have to ask about Michael Pillsbury, chief advisor to the president on these matters. Yesterday, he said that Trump may escalate the trade war if there's no deal soon. What do you think about that?
Yeah, very interesting. He said 50%. Tariffs could go to 50 or 100% related to that. You know, this is kind of a message to the Chinese, it seems. Basically, look, we're doing some concessions here, rolling back exemptions, basically, on 437 items. Now, it's your turn, or things could get worse. Kind of a message to the Chinese there, it seems, going out. Now, we do expect through Chinese sources there possibly could be that agriculture buy, the announcement that the U.S. has been looking for, maybe either this week or next week. The U.S. or part of the Chinese trade delegation is going to take a trip to the Midwest states to tour farms as a goodwill gesture. So all of this fits together for a clearer picture, David.
Let me go back to the professor on this, because Pillsbury's statements are kind of interesting, saying that he's going to ratchet the whole thing up. But as we get closer to the election, if he does ratchet up, we know how the market's going to react. It's going to go down. That will not necessarily be a good thing for his reelection chances.
I agree, and I certainly hope, as do the markets and all the companies I speak to, that we get a trade deal sometime sooner, not later, and also that we don't lose sight of the fact that we need a broad trade deal here, not just something narrow that has them buy more of our goods and us more of theirs, but something that really deals with the structural issues which are at the heart of this. So the idea that American companies really are set up not to succeed in China. There's forced technology transfer. They're stealing our intellectual property, all of the things we know. I just hope that Lighthizer, Mnuchin, and the negotiators aren't losing sight of that.
Well, they're the smartest negotiators I've ever seen in terms of trade negotiators, so they are in a good position to do that. Professor Anja Manuel, great to see you. Thank you very much for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
And switching gears to the Federal Reserve Board, James Bullard is the president of the St. Louis Fed. He's